Democrat Wes Moore and Republican Dan Cox are vying to win the state's top position when Governor Larry Hogan's term is up.
Yeah, our Larry Miller and Casey Nolan are live tonight covering this heated race. And we want to start with Larry, who is live at Wes Moore's election night event in Baltimore. Hey, Larry.
Guys, good evening. Of course, good evening to you at home as well. We are here now in Baltimore City in front of the Marriott, where those final preparations are underway for tonight's election night watch party. Wes Moore, Aruna Miller have been going to strategic polling locations, trying to turn up the vote as much as they possibly can to have a good night tonight. They've been in areas like Prince George's County, Baltimore County, even Montgomery County. These are heavily Democratic areas where every vote is going to matter for Democrats this evening. Now, the Wes Moore campaign has been doing fairly well. Polling has consistently had that campaign upwards of 30 points ahead of their Republican challenger, Dan Cox. But as we know, polling aside, analysis aside, voters will have the final say tonight. We went to a polling location in Fells Point here in Baltimore City asking this one question: what is the primary issue driving you to the polls tonight? Here's what they had to say. What's that number one issue for you?
Probably the crime and the education here. 64 years or Democrat-ran city. It's pretty crazy out here in Fells Point sometimes. I was almost robbed last night, and I think the security guard called 911 and there was a busy tone, so that's just the way it is around here sometimes.
Personally, the biggest issue for me here was the governor's race, just between Moore and Cox. So that was it. I wasn't too informed on the local issues, I'll admit, but I did the best that I could.
Now, if Democrats do well tonight in those statewide races, we could have history made this evening by having the first African-American governor, the first immigrant lieutenant governor, the first African-American attorney general, and the first female state comptroller. Of course, that's if everything goes according to plan for Democrats. But I want to bring up one issue that we saw at the polling location today. When we were talking with voters, consistently the issue that we heard from them was this issue of crime and the economy. Those are issues that Republicans typically poll well on. So while Democrats have consistently been doing well polling up until this point, considering that those two issues are driving people to the polls, it could be an even better night for Republicans. But of course, we'll have to wait and see once the polls close at 8 o'clock tonight. Guys?
Yeah, crime, education, the economy. Hear from that guy
and we hear it
ago.
over and over and over again, right? There's a thread here that voters are thinking about these kitchen table issues for sure. All right.
Thank you, Larry.
Our Casey Nolan is also in Maryland's capital, live at Dan Cox's campaign. He's in Annapolis. Casey.
Let me give you a sense of some of the Republican politics at play here. You know, Maryland has a popular, outgoing Republican governor, but it may be more likely that he would show up where Larry is at the Democratic watch party than step foot in this ballroom here in support of Dan Cox. Not only has Larry Hogan said he won't vote for Dan Cox, he's called him a QAnon whack job. His words. Here's some video of Dan Cox voting earlier today. This is in Frederick County. Dan Cox has tried to brush off Hogan's criticism and backed off some of his own previous statements, like calling Mike Pence a traitor on January 6th. The first-term state delegate has instead tried to keep the focus on his priorities of lowering business taxes and property taxes that he says could help homeowners and renters with the high cost of housing. Today, we stopped by a polling place in Bowie and asked voters what they see as the most important issues.
Education is very important. I also think it's very important that we spend money on the infrastructure and that we're building the roads and that we're supporting the school system.
Inflation right now, definitely. Gas prices, everything is going through the roof. All the prices are going up. Just got to find something to get the inflation to come down and get the economy really kick-started again.
The Cox campaign is hoping voters will see him as the better candidate to deal with inflation and some of the other issues you heard there. Now, for all of the support that Cox may not have from the establishment Republican Party, he does have the backing of former President Donald Trump. It remains to be seen, Leslie, if that will help in a state where Democrats do have a registration advantage.
You are so right, and that has probably had something to do with why we haven't seen him very much in Maryland.